So we are now live, hopefully. So let's see if our viewers can already see and hear us. Uh, you have a live chat. Everybody who's watching, you have a live chat, and you can always ask questions during the session, and there will be some time for Q&A at the end. So you are very welcome to participate, and of course, Petar will be happy to answer. So I welcome you to episode 7 of Sitecore Products Tips and Tricks series. And I am Daria Bogdanova. I am a customer and partner enablement manager in Sitecore. And we are here with Petar Mitev, who is a subject matter expert on Content Hub. And he is going to tell us about how to leverage agile asset workflows with Content Hub Operations. So I give you the floor, Petar.
Thank you, Daria. Thank you so much for inviting me for your sessions of episodes. I think they're on very interesting topics, and I'm very happy to share my knowledge as much as I can. So, in fact, the title of the session, I created the title of the session before I actually created the content of my presentation. I should have named it Leveraging Agile Asset Workflows with Content Hub, because I'm planning to give an overall overview of the different types of workflows you can achieve with Content Hub, and not specifically to Content Hub operations. And in fact, I'm going to dive into Content Hub DAM workflows a bit more than in Content Hub operations, because uh, if I have to cover Content Hub operations workflows, I think we'll need another 4 hours of these sessions. Nevertheless, let me start with just quick slide about myself. I'm Petar Mitev. I'm the founder and principal consultant of Mitev Consulting. It's a company that I started very recently, couple of weeks back. Basically leveraging on my 8 years of Content Hub experience. Um, I'm former Sitecore. I've worked in product marketing, product management, pre-sales consulting, and client services. Done various implementations involved in all kinds of things you could imagine in the Content Hub, Sitecore Content Hub world. And actually recently moved to Brazil back in December 2023. So the whole reason why I founded my company and started my consultancy practice is to really just basically I wanted to continue what I was doing before, advocating and providing Sitecore Content Hub value to whoever might need them, whether this is partners or customers. So let's get started on our topic of today. What I wanted to do is just give you a quick overview of Sitecore Content Hub for the ones that have not heard much about it. And then I'm going to dive into the different types of basically defining what asset workflows are in Sitecore Content Hub and the different types of workflows which we can achieve. Um, Talking a bit about the benefits of going more agile with asset workflows, and then specifically, I'm going to talk about state flows actually. So really, how I think that this is a very new and innovative way of working with assets. And then we're going to dive into how we can optimize our digital assets with such agile workflows, leveraging state flows. And final part of our agenda is just drawing some conclusions of my findings and presentation I'm going to give you today. And if there's any questions, I can answer at the end. So, quick introduction to Sitecore Content Hub. So, so in Content Hub DAM, we have which is where we can manage assets, simplifying the storage and distribution and management and control of digital assets. So this is our digital asset management dumb layer of Content Hub. And as well as managing entities. I like to call it managing entities through a client-driven domain model, because in the past we've talked about PCM, product content management, but actually it's much more than that. We can integrate products or services or any entity data expand the out of the box domain model, which is actually something we expect from our customers to do, and enrich it with their own marketing content to create a holistic single source of truth for their media and content. So next to this foundational layer, we also have another foundational layer, which is the headless content delivery through Sitecore Experience Edge. This allows content to be published headlessly to any channel or downstream app. And this is an add-on, the Creative Automation Content Publisher add-on, powered by Chili Publish, that basically allows marketers to automate repetitive tasks in their content production processes through smart templates and such. And next to these foundational layers, we have our Content Hub Operations capabilities, which is basically the ability to manage content and manage our operations as a whole. So, what I mean by manage content, so meaning that you can streamline your content strategizing, planning, the creation of structured content as well as unstructured content, anything that is meaningful to your marketing organization, as well as the publication onto your channels. All this done through as well through headless content delivery through Experience Edge. And the operations layer, the marketing resource management layer, which allows to plan, manage, and automate, execute every phase of a marketing project. This allows for more sophisticated and advanced workflow management of content as well as assets as well as any entity. Right? There's workflow capabilities in all of these modules. Basic workflow capabilities are there. The more advanced operations capabilities are done through our marketing resource management module. And the whole thing, the whole bulk of capabilities is what we call Content Hub. All right. So from a licensing perspective, if you purchase Content Hub DAM, you get the digital asset management module, the ability to drive your client-driven domain model, as well as headless content delivery through Experience Edge. With Content Hub operations, you you get all of that from the foundational layer capabilities, managing assets, entities, and headless content delivery, as well as managing content and operations through our CMP and MRM modules. And the Creative Automation Content Publisher is a separate add-on license. So now I've given a quick overview of the capabilities. I just wanted to focus a little bit on how, having a centralized DAM, having a centralized content hub benefits everyone in the marketing organization through, and beyond. So around marketing operations, allowing to easily manage projects, budgets across teams, from strategy to planning, to the digital or content marketer teams that have one platform for efficient access and management and distribution of content at scale, as well as the content creators, the web editors, that further facilitates the creation and collaboration of content. Digital agencies that Content Hub improves, gives them the ability to improve efficiency and client collaboration through such a centralized tool. Not to forget the product marketers. They always need to use the latest product content at any given times. So this is a key benefit for the merchandisers and the product marketers in the marketing ecosystem. And last but not least, the IT directors. So the IT teams that need to integrate with the rest of the marketing technology stack, need to maintain operations, security, and data privacy, and all these are compliance. These are um, regulational or compliance requirements that the IT director is concerned about. And when we talk about you know owning your end-to-end content lifecycle with Content Hub, it may be that it feels like an overwhelming thing to do to achieve, but when people take the effort to do it right, benefits start to compound on the global content operations. So just to highlight a few of those strategic benefits, and there's many other more operational ethical benefits, but here really talking about strategic benefits. It's a streamlined process can um, a streamlined process for strategizing, planning, and creating and improving and publishing content across channels gets you to market faster. It gives you a holistic 360-degree view of all of your marketing content through a unified platform, and it allows to um, uh, and allows to further optimize content through maximizing the strategic value of content and consistency across channels. So enough about just to wrap up the quick introduction. So I wanted to dive now into asset workflows in Sitecore Content Hub. Um, so what is what is an asset workflow? I like to think of it as the backbone of a digital asset management system. There are several definitions, and the workflow can vary differently between organizations. We see on the right side of the slide is an illustrative workflow where an asset might be created, it might be further enriched, managed, further collaborated on, approved, published, distributed, retrieved from the dam, repurposed from the dam into other adapted content, whether this is personalizing content or localizing assets for specific markets or channels. And then at the end of this workflow, it gets expired or archived. But I like to think of the asset workflow as a systematic process of organizing and storing and retrieving and ultimately managing digital assets within an organization. So just a couple of key benefits here, key kind of um, uh, key points to point out about asset workflows is that it streamlines digital asset management from creation to distribution, helps to guide digital asset management activities. So it provides that structure for organizations through efficient organization of assets, facilitates collaboration across teams, and especially when we're, in a global organization where teams are spread around the globe or spread around different cities and remote locations. This is key. So having one platform where collaboration happens, um, and the communication around those asset workflows. It allows for faster approvals, increased security, and improved brand consistency. So what I wanted to do next is kind of dive into a uh, couple of types of workflows. In fact, I'm going to try to cover all of the different types of workflows that Content Hub offers. And it starts really with the Content Hub DAM, as we call it, the two-step approval workflow in so where an asset creator uploads and submits their assets for approval, then these assets get approved or rejected by the reviewers, and then those assets might get archived at some point once they're expired. So this is the out of the box DAM workflow. It's a fixed workflow. It's not configurable, low effort to implement, simple and easy to use, has a good adoption. And it doesn't require the Content Hub Operations license. So this is a note. Um, and so I want to highlight we can also do workflows with the state flows engine, which is going to be the main focus on my demonstration later in this presentation. So asset
Peter, we have some
flows,
issue with the
state flow,
connection quality.
yeah,
Yeah, if you don't mind, you could you maybe stop your camera because you anyway we don't see you now on the stream, so maybe this will improve on the
yeah. Let me
StreamYard.
see if that's going to improve the
Yeah,
connection.
yeah, let's see.
Is it how is it now? Is it better?
Yeah, I think yes. I think yes.
Okay. And please do feel free to interrupt me if it breaks down again. I'll try to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
So I was just covering how asset level state flows are more configurable and adaptable to specific processes of organizations, allow for automating and streamlining the operations, and state flows can be further cyclical or linear, right? So you don't need to be stuck to a linear workflow. It can be a cyclical a workflow. It requires a medium effort of implementation, and it gives a balance. I think it gives a good balance between ease of use and flexibility. Again, it doesn't require the Content Hub operations license because state flows are available in the base Content Hub DAM module. So and now I'm going to move on into the Content Hub operations types of workflows. So the first one to note is the jobs workflow through um, these are, I like to call them workspaces for agile and quick work. They allow, a workspace for teams to collaborate quickly through, again, through the Stateflows engine, again, through automation and allowing to streamline the operations. But there's a difference in the way that, a stateflow is built on the asset level versus a stateflow here is built on the jobs level. So through jobs in content operations, the actions are linked. The actions are that are defined in the state engine, stateful engine, um, are linked. So there's actions linked to them, which are defining the asset workflows. Meaning that if a job is allowing to approve assets, then all the assets inside of the job will have the approval action on them. So these are not individual workflows of each single asset inside of the job. And this is the main difference here between stateful on the asset level versus on the job level. And it's also limited to to the actual job actions that are available in the product. So there are a couple of I think there are around seven or eight actions available in the jobs stateful engine, and you don't have the option to extend those actions. So still quite flexible and still very agile way of working. And so also stateful's can be cyclical or linear. I think jobs require low to medium effort to implement with a quite, I think as well, ease of use and a good flexibility. Requires the Content Hub operations license, um, where that's also a main difference here. Let's move on to basic projects. So this is really the classic task-based project approach. You chain, you delegate, you assign tasks, and then you manage your project. It includes resource and budget management in basic projects, so you can look at your workload of your teams as well as the kind of the overall marketing budget on the project. Um, but you're also limited to the tasks actions. These are the out of the box available tasks are not configurable. So um, you need to adapt your workflow to the available task actions. Tasks are linear in nature. So this is a major difference between stateflows and tasks. Um, you start from one task, you chain the next one, and you create a dependency from one to the other task. If you need to go back to do a second approval, that's a manual process that needs to happen. So the project manager, the operations manager needs to go and do this step manually. While in a stateflow, this can be automated. In my opinion, it's a low to medium effort to implement and relatively easy to use and adopt. So kind of being fixed to the linear tasks classic project approach gives the benefit that it's easy, relatively easily understood and and the adoption is quite good. Here it requires again the content of operations license. Let's move on to multi-stage projects. So multi-stage projects are basically multiple basic projects linked together in a waterfall campaign. So a waterfall campaign approach where you manage a timeline, you can have sub-projects or stages within the projects, and you can link up stages with milestones. It's a much more advanced project management tool. Again, it includes resource and budget management, but it's also a more complex campaign management tool. So for me, in my opinion, in my experience with implementations, it's a medium to high effort to implement with a quite complex user adoption. So it requires a lot of training and a lot of change management. Requires a Content Hub Operations license again, as it's part of the uh, projects module, the MRM module as well. So, and final kind of hybrid approach that I'd like to call is the so agile projects, hybrid projects, which I have recently kind of delved into more in this type of approach, is that it can be applied on basic projects and multi-stage projects. What it means is basically you take a stateflow workflow engine and you apply it on the project and you apply it on the assets within your projects. So for me, a very flexible, adaptable to hybrid approaches uh, kind of workflow. You can apply the state flows in tandem on project level as well as asset level, so you can have this kind of driving your project workflow on the overall high level project progress through a state flow instead of building a timeline. And on the asset level within the project, whatever is being, the deliverables of that project can also be driven through state flows. Has a high level of effort to implement. Um, and honestly, I think it might be also a more complex user adoption, but more flexible. To me, a much more flexible approach than the linear waterfall approach. Again, requires the Content Operations license. All right, so these were 6 major approaches to kind of workflows in Content Hub. And actually, what I want to continue for the rest of the presentation is really focus on this approach here because of time constraints. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to cover all these. And also, I think it's a relatively new area and probably not so explored that I think it's worth exploring and seeing how it can benefit. This type of approach can benefit. It has its limitations, but it has also its advantages, and I wanted to cover that a little bit. So couple of benefits of agile asset workflows. So it's really, to me, it's enhancing efficiency. It's about shifting from the more traditional linear workflows, fixed out of the box kind of workflow, to a more flexible and automated process. So it's based on the modern Content Hub feature, Stateflow's engine, as I mentioned before. It offers more flexibility. It offers the ability to automate your operations and the ability to adapt more quickly. So it allows to evolve with customer needs as the customer needs grows, as they onboard more teams or more groups of work groups that might follow different type of workflows. It allows to evolve with it, and because of its capability to configure kind of very advanced and complex workflows, that is also a need that might be something that grows with the customer's needs. So how do we optimize digital assets with agile workflows? What I wanted to start with is bringing kind of a blank slate of a typical digital assets workflow, where the asset lifecycle status on top here that I've represented with the colored boxes, from the status created to under review to rejected to approved to archive. This is not a linear process, and you'll see in a minute how this works. it's a very cyclical process, and the different roles, hypothetical roles that might be involved in this. So the asset creator or the designer, the brand approver, and the content administrator or the DAM librarian also could be involved in this process. So it all starts with, the assets get uploaded. The asset creator finishes creating the assets um, from their creative design applications, and then they get uploaded in the DAM. The next step is to apply metadata tagging, and this where here it's very important to apply to allow the AI engine to do some automated tagging to speed up this process. And as soon as the asset creator is done, they can then send the assets to review. So for approval. At that point, the assets are in review, and then the brand approver receives those assets to be either uh, annotated, to send for reworked, for retouch, or to be approved into the DAM. So once let's continue in the rejected flow here. So once the assets might be annotated or sent for rework by the brand approver, maybe they've used the wrong colors or the wrong images. So they're going to get sent back to the asset creator as rejected. And the asset creator will upload a new version on the asset, send those assets for review, and it will be back to the under review status. The brand approver receives them again. So this is where the cyclical nature of workflows is very typical in asset workflows. And at that point, the process can be repeated multiple times. But once the assets are again in review and the brand approver decides that these are looking good, they can then approve the assets, and then they're sent and published to the DAM. So this is where an asset that has been until now in progress state is now become approved and is available in the DAM. It's available in the repository to be searched for, to be retrieved by the Content Hub users, but as well as it can be published on downstream channels. So it's actually utilized in whether this is a CMS on a web page or in an e-commerce product detail page. That's so that asset is now live. And after some time, let's say a year later, the asset becomes outdated. So the content administrator or the DAM librarian might decide to, okay, either automatically expire those assets, and this can be done through some external scripting logic, or to archive those assets while they're doing the maintenance of the digital asset management library. So at that point, the asset can be archived. And of course, once an asset is archived, it could also be restored back to be published in the DAM. So how do we take this process? And this is something that can look very differently for depending on the type of asset. But I wanted to start with something simple and basically take this process and enable it through state flows on the assets in the DAM, going outside of the out of the box two-step approval workflow. So the first thing we do is, yeah, we have to enable the stateflow engine on the m.asset definition. So in m.asset definition, um, we go to the settings, and then we enable for stateflow. We have to enable for assignees so that it gives the possibility to assign users to entities of this definition. We add the detail page for the asset details, or we can do a specific asset detail page, which is specifically designed for the workflow of an asset before an actual asset has been approved. So this is also possible and interesting to do if we want to minimize the information on the page, to really focus on the process itself, to focus on the retouching, the annotations, the uploading of the new version, and then finally approving the final version of the asset. Um, and then and also very importantly, we need to add the fields. So the fields that will be driven by the states in the stateflow engine. So in our case here, for sure we need to add the final lifecycle status field. This is an out-of-the-box field which drives the lifecycle of an asset. So we need to add that into the state flow of the asset definition. We can enable other fields if our process requires it. This could be a Boolean field. This can be a text field that we apply text at the specific stage or state of the process. The possibilities are quite flexible here. So once we have enabled the stateflow engine, we need to create a new stateflow for the m.asset definition. So we go into stateflows, we create a new stateflow for the m.asset definition, we give it a name. We can optionally define a specific detail page for this specific stateflow, which is also very interesting. If we want to have a different representation of the asset workflow for every single stateflow that we have for our process. And then also very interesting, defining an email template, which I'll get into a bit later at the end of the presentation. So once we've created the stateflow, we start defining all the states with the assignees and status fields in each state. Now, I'm not going to go into details here because that can actually quite take some time. So essentially here we're defining the states of the status of each asset and then the transitions between the states. So how do we drive that workflow of the asset between the different states? And then so the process that I showed in my previous slide is actually translated into this workflow here. And then just last thing, a couple of last pieces that need to kind of tie the puzzle together is to, okay, once we've created that state flow, it's not going to be applied automatically onto the asset. So we need to make sure that it gets kicked off automatically. So what we do is um, we can create an action that can start the DAM asset workflow stateful that I've defined earlier, and then create a trigger that basically takes the condition, the definition condition of our asset definition. For all assets that get created in the system, we want to trigger this asset workflow. And this is specifically interesting. It's quite interesting if you further add conditional logic that can drive specific workflows based on specific asset types. One asset type, a product pack shot might have a different workflow versus a stock image that gets uploaded in the system. So so we can apply conditional logic to kick off a different workflow for different assets based on the asset type. I think the asset type is one of the first things that you define when you're adding a metadata tag on the asset itself. So I think it's logical thing to use for the conditional logic on the trigger. So but here I'm going to keep it simple and I'm just going to kick off one workflow for our assets. And then the next step is to express the workflow in the UI for the user. Because until now, we've been doing all this backend workflow configuration. Now we need to express it in the UI of for the end users. So we first need to add the state machine viewer on the asset detail page. In my case, I've added it in a new tab, workflow, and essentially it's showing me the state that the asset is currently in. It shows a small description. The asset has been created. Please check and validate that all metadata fields have been added, and then submit for review. And it's assigned to myself because I'm the creator of that asset. So that's something we can also easily configure in the workflow. And then the next thing that we do is we add the stateflow transition operation in the entity operations of the asset detail page right here. So here it's going to display the next transition on the state that the asset is in right now. So in the created state, the next step of the created state is to send for review, which is going to move the asset from the created state to the under review state. Um, and then finally, we want to also make sure that these stateflow transitions operations are on the search component in the create page and the review page, and the selection component in the create and review pages, because um, you know, it's more efficient to have those actions, the transitions of the state flow available on the quick preview of the asset, rather than having to click in the details of the asset for each and single asset. So you can also apply bulk transitions for, let's say, the 10 assets that I've just uploaded. I can bulk edit them in edit the metadata fields. Once edited, I can then apply the stateful transitions through the selection component as well. All right, so this was quite a lot of information so far. I think it's time for a quick demo. I'm gonna pause real quick. Daria, was everything clear until now, and was my connection, I hope, was okay so far?
I think there were just very small hiccups on the way, but overall, I think it's quite understandable. Probably people who are watching can write in the chat whether they can hear everything clearly. So,
Okay, perfect. So I think you can see the screen of this demo sandbox. Excuse me. Um, right, so here is I've configured everything that I've shown so far in my presentation. Um, yeah, wanted to basically demo that workflow. Just refresh the page. Make sure
I think the screen is a bit frozen.
yeah, I'm just struggling with my connection right now. There you go. I think it should be visible on your.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So I've just uploaded 6 assets in my Content Hub instance, and um, next step for me was basically to edit those assets to make sure that all the metadata is applied to them. So I'm going to select and edit in table. So we'll leverage the mass edit in table, um, that allows to quickly fill in fields. Let's say I just want to fill in the description of these assets, select the correct brand for these, fill in some of the fields, and I'll essentially also add the asset type. So I'm going to put social here, and let's leave out one of these here as with asset type empty, just to show an example. In a minute, the mass edit will the job will complete. And so once I've edited the metadata, perhaps some AI tagging will be applied to it. And my next step is, okay, I'm done with my upload of the new assets. So I want to send them for review. So what I can do is I can individually send for review, clicking on the button. This is the stateflow transition action that we've just configured. And I can do that one by one for each asset. But I can also do a bulk. Uh, I can also do a bulk transition, basically clicking, selecting, and then sending those assets for review through the bulk action here, through the selection component. And in a minute, the job will be processed. And so now I wanted to show actually what happens if I didn't fill in the asset type, which is a mandatory field, and if I try to transition the action. So if I try to transition the asset to the next step, it gives me an error because the asset type is not filled in. So what I'll do is I'll make sure that the asset type is also filled in here. So this is very important because um, I don't know any client that doesn't have any mandatory fields applied to their asset schema. You want to make sure that your assets are entering your DAM repository with all the necessary information filled in on the level of the descriptive information about the asset, the marketing content, or any other information that needs to be filled in, such as taxonomy, the right brand, the right asset type, and so on. And so once we filled in the asset type, now we can again send for review. So we sent the asset for review. In a minute, the new state will be applied. Refresh here. And so here we can see that the asset is under review, has been submitted. Let's just check, brand consistency, metadata, everything is looking okay. We can also annotate on the asset. I'm not going to show that right now. We can, and if we feel like something needs to be retouched or reworked, we can annotate and send for rework. So with this action, we get a confirmation real quick. Make sure you have annotated the assets before rejecting. Let's confirm. So this is now going to send the asset back to the rejected state. Once rejected, we can upload a new version. So I can drag and drop a new version here. It's going to upload a new version on the asset. And then once I'm done, I'll then send for review. In the meantime, I've turned off my notification, but I've actually received a couple of emails that is showing me, basically it's showing me, look, there's new work assigned to me, and I can click on that email, and then it's going to show me that I have this asset requires my attention. I need to either approve or reject or do something with that asset. And so once we've uploaded a new version and we've done the work, we can finally approve and publish the asset, which then pushes the asset into our DAM repository. So in a minute, we'll be able to see the asset in our general repository. If I filter by date created, and we can see the new Minneapolis Skyline asset is now in the DAM repository. And then I talked about how the final workflow usually is an asset is taken out of its life. So usually that's either through expiration or through archival. So we can archive this asset because it's no longer applicable, and it's going to be removed from the repository, and it's now removed from the repository, and it will be available in the backend archived assets repository, which is only available for the DAM librarians to view. So this was a quick demo of the workflow that kind of configured and created for you. Um, I have one last slide, but I want to open the kind of the room, the floor for any questions if there might be, before I kind of give you some of my conclusions and kind of, you know, there are some benefits, but also limitations for this approach.
Yeah, thank you, Petar. So everybody is welcome to write their questions in the chat. Feel free to do that. Otherwise, if you are watching the stream after it's finished, you are also welcome to get to the comment section and write a comment, and I will be happy to pass it to Petar for an answer. Okay, so far I don't see any questions. As soon as I see one, I will tell you about that, but I think Petar, you can
Yep.
continue.
Yep. Sounds good. So a couple of findings here, and kind of best practices, sort of some tips that I think are worth to note here. Think this one is quite a little bit obvious, but maybe perhaps not enforced too much. Is to making sure that the mass edit tool represents all the necessary metadata fields for quick editing and submission of assets. Because I mean, usually asset creators are bulk uploading assets, so the mass edit tool is very important for making sure that their work is efficient. That once they've uploaded all the assets, they can easily in one screen apply all the necessary metadata to the assets, and then save and submit them for approval. Second is make sure you leverage conditional mandatory fields based on lifecycle status condition. So in my example, I did asset type is mandatory, is conditionally mandatory when the lifecycle status is under review or approved. And so includes this condition, and the content repository is standard. So meaning that the standard content repository is basically the DAM library. So it's going to check for mandatory validation that the asset type needs to be filled in only when you send the asset for under review, or if you skip and you go straight to the approval. So basically, it's validating every asset type needs to be filled in on every asset that is either under review or approved and content repository standard. And most importantly, state flows will check for the mandatory conditions. This is something that in the past was not possible, but it has now, I don't know exactly when, but it has been added, has been improved in the engine. So I think a huge door for opportunities is opened up with this. Leverage fields for approvers or brands um, that will drive dynamic user group assign. What this means is that basically add a field. You can add a taxonomy field in your asset definition for the brand or the category or the approver. If you want to assign a specific approver to the asset, while uploading, while editing the metadata of the asset, you can use that field to drive dynamic user group assignment. And that's something quite easily to achieve in the schema. You add the field, and then you use that field for the user to to drive the user group assignment in the state flow. Then uh, leveraging the creator dynamic assignee, and actually there's other options available. There's the creator, there's the current user, and there's the modifier, so the current editor of the asset. But I think in my case, the workflow that I showed, it makes more sense to use the creator as a dynamic assignee. So it's useful when you're sending back the asset to the original creator. So if the original creator needs to re upload a new version of the asset, then this is a very useful dynamic assignment option on the stateflow. Dynamic user groups, they can be extended with custom scripting logic for more complex cross-brand, multiple kind of departmental approval uh, workflow. This is a more complex topic to delve in. I just want to highlight that this is possible, and it has been done in customer implementations. So if you have this kind of complex cross-brand, cross-market departmental approval, where you need to leverage a more dynamic automated stateflow transition assignment on the stateflow, this can be achieved. Um, and leverage custom email templates. So it's really useful to customize the workflow email message that each person receives when something is assigned to them. So um, create your own email template. I think the CMP template from the CMP workflow is a good start. Use that as your kind of starting point. Create a new email template and customize it to really like kind of dynamically send specific email messages that tell the person directly in the email, this is the state, this is what you need to do, kind of to allow for more easy use, ease of use for the workflow. Some limitations that I have discovered. You cannot leverage user group policies for conditional permissions. So in the user group policies, you can give a permission on the asset definition to approve, to publish, to submit um, assets, right? I don't know exactly the the exact namings of the permissions, but essentially it allows you for conditional logic. It you can specify that only the brand, the Sitecore brand, can approve assets in the UK market in this specific user group. So this kind of conditional permission is not possible with state flows. The assignment or the permission, so to speak, is driven fully by the stateful assignment, which is either on a user or a user group level. So I think it's still quite flexible, especially with the dynamic assignment options. You can achieve quite a lot, but these kind of conditional permissions that are on the user group policies that allow you to approve only specific cases are unfortunately not yet available in state flows. And I think a minor limitation, to be honest, you cannot have a comment field for the rejection reason. So in the out of the box DAM approval workflow, and I think I can actually show it real quick in the review space, we have the option to either approve or reject. So this is the out of the box. So here we see the stateflow actions, the stateflow transitions to approve or to reject. And here we see actually the out of the box DAM approval and rejection. So if I click on reject, I have a reason to reject. Yeah, unfortunately, this is not an option in the stateflows engine, and hopefully something that the Content Hub product team will implement sometime in the future. So that's it from my end.
Yeah, thank you very much, Petar. Thank you very much. So once again, everybody is welcome to leave their questions in the comments. And uh, yeah, it was very, very interesting. Also for me as a Content Hub focused person, I think I have learned a lot. So thanks a lot, and looking forward to some other presentations from you probably in the future. So it will be very interesting to know more about Content Hub operations, workflows, and especially in projects. So that would be very interesting. So maybe sometime in the future.
For sure. I'll be very happy to organize another one in the future with you, Daria. So thank you so much for inviting me, and we'll be
Yeah,
in touch.
yeah, sure. Thanks a lot, and thanks everybody for attending.